Are you tired of putting things off until tomorrow? And then tomorrow's tomorrow, and tomorrow's tomorrow? Today on this video, I'm going to show you how to beat procrastination, go from excuse maker to action taker, and get it done now. I'm going to show you that no one has a procrastination problem. People think they have a procrastination problem, but I've never met a person in my life with a procrastination problem. Procrastination is never the problem. Procrastination is always the symptom of the problem. And in this video, I'm going to show you why you keep putting things off. The reason people procrastinate, any of us, is because we are associating more pain than pleasure with the actual getting of this thing done. If I just change it and I start associating more pleasure than pain to this activity, I'll get the thing done. Now, the interesting thing about it is, regardless of the thing, it's like we think, well, I'm just procrastinating this thing because this is the thing that I don't like to do. No, you're procrastinating because of how you're using your mind or avoiding using your mind. But I'm going to show you how to use your mind in such a way that procrastination will never be something you have to deal with again. You'll just get it done, and you'll understand how to get it done in real time when you're tempted to procrastinate. Everybody ready? Shout, I'm ready. Ready. Okay, here we go. So this is how it works. This is you. And by the way, not only does this work in helping you not procrastinate, it'll also work in helping you help other people when you're communicating with them not to procrastinate. It'll help you help your spouse to stop procrastinating. It'll help you help your children stop procrastinating. It'll help you, if you're a teacher, help your students stop procrastinating if you understand this principle. So, this is you. These are the facts. And you observe the facts. Maybe you see them. Maybe you hear them. And when you observe the facts, the very first thing you do is you put a frame around the facts. And that frame has a positive aspect and a negative aspect. Now, the positive and negative aspect of the facts have to be there in order for the fact to be there. What does that even mean? What it means is there's no such thing as a purely positive fact. And there's no such thing as a purely negative fact. And so what happens when we put this frame around the fact is that frame is in the form of a focus in our head. And that focus in our head, if we're focused on the positive aspect of the fact, it makes us happy or it energizes us so that we can go and take that action. But if we focus on the negative aspect of the fact, it makes us sad or some negative emotion, so we avoid whatever that activity is. Now, as soon as I create a frame around the fact and I start focusing on either the positive or the negative, the first thing I do is I start building a belief. And it doesn't matter if the belief is true. It's my belief. People think that they believe things because they're true, but here's the reality. People think things are true because they believe them. And if you can become self-aware enough to know that the things that you are believing are true, you're believing they're true because you think them rather than you think they're true because you believe them rather than thinking that you believe them because they're true. Just be aware of that. And it may be true, but the reason you believe it is because you think it's true. Are y'all tracking? Okay. And so the first thing I do when I focus on the fact, I focus on the fact in my head, then I develop in my mind, I develop a belief. And that belief also has a positive and a negative. If I'm focused on the positive aspect of the fact, that belief manifests in my life as faith, which faith without works is dead. What does that mean? That means if I really believe something, I'm going to do something about it. But if I'm focused on the negative aspect of the fact, then it's going to manifest a belief called doubt. Now, here's the thing most people don't understand. Faith and doubt are both belief. Most people think that faith is belief and doubt is the absence of belief. But doubt is not the absence of belief. Faith is belief in the outcome I desire. Doubt is belief in the outcome I don't desire. And so it's not that, well, a person who has faith doesn't have doubt. Everybody who has faith has doubt. You doubt the opposite of the thing you have faith in. And everybody who has doubt has faith. They have faith in the thing that's opposite of what they're doubting. And that's just how life works. And so what we have to do is we have to be aware and hyper intentional about what aspect of the facts we focus on. Because the aspect of the facts we focus on cause us to believe things that affect outcomes in our lives. I really hope I hope you are wrapping your minds around what I'm saying. And so what happens, people don't, that's why, have you ever heard the phrase, if your attitude is right, the facts don't matter? This is why. If your attitude is right, what kind of attitude do I need to have? Well, I need to have, I don't know about you, you have the kind of attitude you want to have. I need to have the kind of attitude where I'm focused on the positive aspect of the facts as often as possible, unless focusing on the positive aspect of the fact is going to put my life or health or family or finances or something that's important to me in jeopardy. If focusing on the positive aspect of the fact does not somehow put me in jeopardy, how could focusing on a positive aspect of the fact? Let's say somebody's breaking in my house. And I think, oh, they're just breaking in my house because they want to come say hi, right? I'm focused on, that's an erroneous belief that could cause me harm, right? And I'm focused on the positive aspect of the fact. Now, is it possible that somebody could be breaking into my house because they want to come say, I mean, that possibility exists, but what's the likelihood? Not likely. Are y'all tracking? Okay, so when I focus on the positive aspect of the fact, I manifest a belief called faith, or I focus on the negative aspect of the fact and manifest a belief called doubt, what happens is this belief travels down into my heart and it produces a feeling in my heart. Did you know that feelings are the fuel of action? Did you hear what I just said? Feelings are the fuel of action. What does that even mean? That means human beings are singularly motivated. People do what they do for one reason and one reason only, and that is because we feel like it. See, I woke up this morning at 5 o'clock when my alarm went off. I actually woke up a little before my alarm went off, 7 minutes before my alarm went off. But I'm getting up at 5 anyway. I'm certainly not going to get up 7 minutes early. And when my alarm clock went off, I did not push snooze. Why didn't I push snooze? Because I knew I had a limited amount of time to work out and then take a shower and get dressed and get here so that I could go live today on YouTube. I had a limited amount of time. But I could have gone back to bed and skipped working out. But then that takes my objective that I'm working on to be able to hit my driver 300 yards, right? It pushes it further and further into the future. Or maybe it pushes it so far into the future that I'll never get it done. So I'm getting up and I'm working out, and this body is going to serve me. It is not the boss. I'm the boss. And so I got up. And so why did I get up? Because I felt like the feeling that I had that if I get up and go work out, I'm going to eventually be able to hit 300-yard drives. Right? I'll be able to hit my drives 300 yards. But if I don't get up, I'll keep dribbling out there 200, 200, 200. Yeah, but you're 64. You shouldn't want to. Okay, you do what you're going to do when you're 64. By the time I'm 65, I'm going to be hitting my drive 300 yards. Okay, so I get a feeling in my heart. Now, the feeling in my heart is going to be determined by the focus in my head, whether it's causing me to manifest faith or doubt. If while I'm focused on the positive aspect of the fact, I manufacture a belief called faith, then that faith is going to cause me to have a feeling called anticipation. Anticipation is it's the energy I get when the outcome I expect is desirable to me. Like if we could master building internal anticipation intentionally, it would change our lives forever. And by the way, most people have almost no practice. Most of the anticipation that we get, someone outside of us creates it. Like Apple's very good at creating anticipation for the new iPhone. But what if you were as good at creating anticipation for getting in shape or for creating wealth for your family or for whatever, getting a promotion at your job? What if you could intentionally build as much intentionality or anticipation intentionally for that as you allow businesses and corporations to build for you? Like when you wake up and you pick up your phone and you start looking at TikTok or you start looking at Facebook or you start looking at Instagram or you start looking at YouTube. What if you could build anticipation for things that move the needle in your life, like they've built anticipation in you for things that don't move the needle in your life? Okay, y'all tracking. And so anticipation is like that feeling you get on Christmas Eve when you know what you're getting, and you're a little kid, and your parents send you to bed early, and you can't sleep. Why can't you sleep? Because you're being energized by your expectation of a magnificent future in less than 12 hours. Right? Anticipation energizes us. But if we're focusing on the negative aspect of the fact, then the feeling in our heart, or that we're going to manifest doubt, and the feeling in our heart is not going to be anticipation. It's going to be anxiety. Anxiety is the thief of our dreams. This is why Jesus said, be anxious over nothing. He said, be careful for nothing. I mean, he said, take no thought for the morrow. That means don't be anxious about tomorrow. Why did he say that? Here's what he's saying. Jesus is saying, stop wasting today's energy worrying about tomorrow's problem. And every time you feel yourself having anxiety over something, by the way, anxiety, let me show you what anxiety feels like. Your hands sweat. Your heart palpitates. Your breathing gets shallow. Your mind races. And you're so exhausted you can't do anything but sit down. That's what anxiety is. Anticipation is the energy I get when the outcome I expect is desired with me. But anxiety is wasting present energy. What is it? Wasting my present energy on a future outcome that's undesirable to me. See, most people mislabel anxiety as fear. And if they didn't get the diagnosis right, they can't find a cure. They mislabel anxiety as fear. They say, well, I have a fear of failure. There's no such thing. I have a fear of success. There's no such thing as that. I have a fear of rejection. There's no such thing. You say, no, yes, there is. I have it. No, you don't. See, fear is caution over a real and present danger. So last night, I went to my house to check out the progress that these contractors are making because I just got back in town yesterday. And when I came out of my house and came out to get in my car, I'm looking around, and I had a little bit of hyper-awareness, fear. Why? Because my son-in-law had just filmed a bobcat outside his house. And I didn't have my gun on me. Oh, I probably shouldn't have said that on YouTube. And I thought about it. Like, what if a bobcat, I mean, it's so dark back there, a bobcat could see me, but I can't see him, right? And then I saw a bobcat. Came in here one morning. I walked out of my office. There's a bobcat at the door of one of those offices right down the street, right down in the parking lot. And so I came outside and I don't have my gun. Okay. So I had fear, but it was really anxiety because there was no bobcat there. Now, if I hit my ball too close to an alligator and I go up and I didn't see the alligator because I'm so focused on golf, I didn't see the big green monster-like alligator, and all of a sudden I notice, I'm like, ugh, right? That's not anxiety, that's fear. Why? Because there's a real and present danger. Fear is caution over a real and present danger. Anxiety is caution over a future imagined danger. So I'm imagining a danger in the future so vividly that it causes a physical reaction in my body now. That's anxiety. Are y'all tracking? Okay, cool. So when I focus on the positive aspect of the fact, builds faith, feeling of anticipation. Negative aspect of the fact builds doubt, anxiety. And which feeling I have is going to determine. So the focus in my head creates a feeling in my heart, and the feeling in my heart produces a function in my hands. What's the function in my hands? Well, it depends. If I have anxiety, the function in my hands is, if I have anticipation, the function in my hand is called power. I now have the power to act. This is how you overcome procrastination. Instead of envisioning it not working, you envision it working. And if you can't envision it working, like if you're, but I tried to envision it working and I couldn't do it, sit down and write out every positive thing that's going to happen in your life when it happens. And then read it out loud. And I know this works because I'm telling myself a different story. And I realize that when I have anxiety, the reason I'm having it is because I'm seeing something negative in my mind's eye. But if I write something down intentionally and I read it out loud, I'm saying something positive in my ears. And doubt is created in the eyes, and faith is created in the ears. That's why it says David encouraged himself in the Lord. Are y'all tracking? And so when I have anticipation, I have power to act. I'm not procrastinating anymore. When I have anxiety, the function in my hand is called powerlessness. I don't have the power to take action. And that powerlessness causes me to say I'll do it later when I have more power and I have more anticipation and I have more faith, because I'm going to be focused on a positive aspect of the fact. And I don't even know that I'm doing that. All of those things I am doing unconsciously. But what if I start doing all of these things consciously? Here's what happens. If I'm a writer, I'll never have writer's block again, because writer's block is actually expecting the book not to sell. If you knew you were going to sell 1 million copies next week, you'd get the book done yesterday. Well, I'm procrastinating doing my sales presentation. I have a procrastination problem when it comes to my sales presentation. No, you don't. What you have is an expectation problem. And you're expecting people not to buy. And you desire them to buy. So one of the things that I did to free myself from that is I stopped desiring people to buy. And I just became aware, if I talk to enough people and I do a presentation in front of enough people, some of them will buy. And so I now don't have to hope somebody buys. I know someone will, because the law of averages makes it so. Even if I have a terrible presentation, if I do enough presentations, somebody's going to buy. I know. I've seen plenty of terrible presentations that made sales. Yes. And so all I'm saying is, stop putting off your future until tomorrow, because the reality is there's no such thing as tomorrow. It's always today. And so to overcome procrastination, I become hyper-intentional about my focus. And then, for me, it becomes now o'clock, and I go from excuse maker to action taker, and I get it done now. Thanks for watching. What if there were a time machine that you could use to go out and survey several parallel futures for yourself? And then you could come back to the present day and design your life today based on your favorite parallel future. Would that be a time machine that you want to use? Could such a time machine exist? I submit to you that such a time machine does exist. It is called your imagination. In fact, as much as 80% of your recollection, which is your memories, is the gaps are filled in with your imagination. We think we're remembering the past as it happened, but we're actually remembering part of what happened and then filling in the gaps with what we think happened, or what we feel like happened, or maybe even sometimes what we would have liked to have happened. Well, if we go out into the future and we can create this design and we don't, then we're going to live our present life by default instead of by design. Let's look at, in this video, how to use our time machine and create the future experience that we'd like to have by implementing those things that are necessary to produce it today. One of my friends, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, he wrote a book called Be Your Future Self Now. He also wrote another book that was a similar concept, but expanded, called The Gap and the Gain. And he wrote another book about, it wasn't about virtual time travel, but it might as well have been, called Slipstreaming. And if you read those 3 books and you put those concepts together, what you'll see is that we use either our past to design our present, or we use our future to design our present. And what I mean by that is, people will go back in their past and they will look at things that they didn't like in their past, and they will either be moving away from them or hiding from them or just recreating them because they think that past experience defines and confines their present experience. But there are some people who go out into the future and they look at the life they desire to have, And then they come back into the present, and then they use the tools that they have available to design that future self now. And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So how do I design a future present that is exactly what I'd like it to be, or it at least resembles more what I'd like my life to be than what I'm experiencing in the present? Because the reality is, if you didn't decide long ago to be living the life you're living, and you didn't design it, that means you defaulted to it. By not designing it, you literally let it happen. So I'm going to show you a couple of concepts on my trusty blackboard on how to come back from the future, your future that you've imagined, and design in the present your experience. This is how your present experience of life feels. This is your experience of awareness. This is your awareness of how your life is. You've got a very small part of this that we're going to call your focus. And in your present experience, this is your present. Anything that's not inside your focus is this. Everything inside your focus is signal. This is the stuff that you're intentionally focused on. Everything outside your focus is noise. It exists, but you don't notice it. It's kind of like the refrigerator running in the background. It's kind of like not remembering to turn your windshield wipers off because you're so focused on the road after it was raining that you don't even hear the windshield wipers. So what happens is we filter out the noise. So the part of our present experience that's outside of our focus is filtered noise. And then we have this thing called the future. Now, the future doesn't exist yet in our experience, and so since it doesn't exist yet in our experience, we don't know what it's going to be unless we decide what it's going to be. And when I can decide what I'd like my future to look like, then I can reverse engineer what I'd have to do to make that future happen now. And if I did that, I'm creating my future, my experience of life by design instead of by default. My objective then is to go out into the future, and find my tool. I think this is the one. Nope. There it is. Okay, go out into the future, grab my future, and then bring it over here and put it inside my present. And so now I'm focused on, I expand my focus. So, change tool. So I expand my focus to include my future. And now I have all of these things that I can go and do to take that future experience and bring it into the present. So what is in the future that I have to do? What do I have to do to design, to bring this over here? What do I have to do to design my future instead of creating a future by default? The first thing I have to do is I have to raise my floor. Now, what does that mean? The floor is the basics. It's the foundation. It's the lowest level of something that you will accept. And so what happens is most people, their floor is so low. It's kind of like when I used to do network marketing. And when I used to do multi-level marketing, I would recruit people who needed it when I first got started. Because I thought, well, I need it. I need this kind of transformation. This guy, Bill Travis, he's making $10,000 a month. This was in 1985. I wasn't making $10,000 a month. I need $10,000 a month. So I'm going to go to people who need it, and I'm going to talk to the needy. I'm going to talk to the needy needers. And I talked to the needy needers, and the needy needers were not wandering wanters. They didn't want it. They needed it, but they didn't want it. I was like, this is fascinating. Like, I needed it and wanted it. So I thought all needers wanted it, but most needers don't want it. And so I wasted a lot of time recruiting people who needed it. And guess what? I recruited some people who needed it, but they would never do the work. And so I said, something has to change. And so what I did was I raised my floor. I recruited a guy who was in the oil business, and his family owned an oil business. He was the best distributor I had ever recruited. He was already rich. And I asked him later, I said, so how is it that you're already rich, but you're looking at ways to make money. I don't get it. And he said, Myron, it's poor people who aren't interested in making money. Rich people are interested in making more money. I was like, but that doesn't make sense. Go figure. Life doesn't always make sense. So you have to raise your floor. Raising your floor means there is a minimum that I will not allow myself to go below. And so I remember in my consulting business, we built a relatively successful consulting business, but I was basically teaching people in network marketing how to do network marketing better. And I know some of you don't like network marketing. And I'm not the biggest fan of it, but I think it's a real and viable business. I don't think network marketing businesses are pyramid schemes any more than any other business is a pyramid scheme. It doesn't matter what business you have. There are fewer people at the top than there are at the bottom. It doesn't matter. Any business structure at all, any government structure, there are fewer people at the top than there are at the bottom. Even in your family, there are fewer people at the top than there are at the bottom. It's just, that's how life works, right? Okay, so anyway, so when I started my consulting business, I was recruiting people who were making maybe $50,000 a year, maybe $60,000 a year, maybe $100,000 a year, maybe $300,000 a year, and I was coaching those people. And then my business kind of imploded in 2008, started imploding in 2008, 2009, 2010. But from 2007 to 2014, we were in our wilderness wandering. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do something a little different here. In fact, I'm going to do something a lot different. So I joined a coaching program that was $25,000 a year. And I didn't have $25,000. This was in 2015. I didn't have $25,000. So I talked them into letting me do a payment plan. I said, if y'all will let me do $5,000 every other month, because I said, and I want to bring both of my kids. They said, well, if you want to bring both of your kids with you, then you have to pay $30,000 a year. Well, I didn't have 25, so needless to say, I didn't have 30. So they said, if you pay $30,000, I said, if you let me pay $5,000 every other month, I'll join. They said, okay, you can pay $5,000 every other month. So I joined. And then I'm in this room. So I remember the first time I went to one of the events, one of the masterminds, it was in a hotel that was $235 a night per room. I didn't have $235 a night. I mean, I had enough money to get us some Southwest tickets and fly out there. And there was an AmeriSuites Inn on the main road, which was only about a mile and a half from the hotel where they were having the event. It was only $79 a night. I got one room for me. I got one room for my son and my daughter. And then we went to this event. Well, in the event, what would happen is you had all these entrepreneurs. There were about 50 of us. And everybody would stand up and share. They'd share like what they do, what they need help with, and then they'd share something that would benefit everybody else in the group. And then they would ask like what they needed help with. They'd ask questions, and the people in the group would help them. So somebody asked a question about this. So I said, well, this is what I would do. And everybody's like, oh, my goodness, that's the greatest thing I ever heard. And then somebody else said, oh, man, Myron, how do you do? And I'm thinking to myself, this is so strange, because I was the brokest person in the room. Everybody in the room was making more money than me. Like, there were people in the room whose names, if I called them, you would know who they are, right? But they were all making more money than me. And I'm broke, but every time I said something, they acted like it was the best thing they ever heard. And I thought to myself, this is very strange. So it's not only people who are making $100 or stuck at $100,000 a year who need my help. It's not only people who are stuck at $500,000 a year, or $300,000 a year, but people who are making $500,000 a year, or people who are making $50,000 a month, or people who are making $100,000 a month, or $200,000 a month. My advice will help them even more. That's what I found out later, because they're more likely to do the work. And I started coaching people who are making big money. And there's one influencer from Canada who bought one of my coaching programs, who was also in that mastermind. He bought one of my coaching programs for $25,000. He applied it. He did $1 million in sales in one day. I'm like, what? You used what you learned from me to make $1 million in a day? That's crazy. And then he came back and he said to me, so how much do you charge for coaching? How much do you charge per hour for coaching? I said, well, $5,000. He said, great. I just sent you $40,000. I won 8 hours. Literally, right after that phone call, I raised my price to $25,000 an hour. So what did I do? I raised my floor. When I raised my floor, everything else elevated. So one of the things you've got to do, if you want to design your future, you have to raise your floor. You have to have a certain level of activity, of work, of things that you'll spend money on, things that you'll pay attention to that are below your floor, I don't mess with that anymore. For instance, like, I'm thinking of how I can say this without sounding bougie, but I'm just going to say it. I don't like bad experiences, right? So, and to me, there are a lot of bad experiences out there to be had. I don't eat at McDonald's. If you want to eat at McDonald's, that's fine. But that, like the kind of food they serve at McDonald's is below my health floor, right? I don't eat pork. It's not like I don't eat it sometimes. Like, I don't eat anything that touches it. I don't eat shrimp. I don't eat lobster. I don't eat any of that stuff, that scavenger foods. I don't eat it. Why? Because it's below my health floor. If I'm playing golf, somebody wants to get in my golf cart and they smoke cigars or they smoke cigarettes, you got to ride with somebody else. You can't ride with me because I don't want to breathe that. And I don't want to be mean. I don't want to be rude, but I'm not going to lower my floor to make somebody feel comfortable who wants to do something that's detrimental to my health. So I raise my health floor. I don't like cardio, but I do it every day anyway. Why? Because I raised my health floor. And so there are just different ways that in every aspect of our life, if we raise our health floor and we raise our relationship floor and we raise our financial floor, and we just say, there are certain things I'm not willing to accept anymore. And I remember the first time I did this back in 1999 when I discovered my first financial breakthrough, which was in 1998, I made $48,000 for the year. And in April of 1999, with just one shift in focus, and I'll tell you what that shift in focus was in a minute, I accidentally made $6,200 in 1 week. And so if you can imagine, you're struggling along, and I wasn't really struggling because that was $48,000 in 1998 was the best year I'd ever had by far. And so $48,000 a year, and then the next year, I changed my focus, and I'll tell you what the focus was in a minute. But when I shifted my focus, I made $6,200 in 1 week. $6,200 was more than 1.5 times what I was making in a month, and I made that in a week just from a shift in focus. What did I do? As soon as I made that $6,200, I said, wow, that was so easy. In fact, I can't believe how easy it was. I said, that must mean it's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time. By the way, I'm not saying that's true. That's what I concluded. I concluded it's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time. And when I concluded that, I made a decision after I came to that awareness, right? And what was the decision I made? I set an intention and made a decision. I am no longer willing to look at, and I am no longer willing to look for the hard ways to make a little bit of money. I'm only going to look at, and I'm only going to look for the easier ways to make a lot. By August of that same year, no, not August, July of that same year, I made $8,000 in 1 day in the stock market. And I was like, it's true. It's true. It's easier to make a lot of money in a short period of time than it is to make a little money over a long period of time. And so I raised my financial floor to only look at and only look for the easier ways to make a lot of money. Now, you say, Myron, what was the focus that you shifted? The focus that I shifted was when I read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And he didn't say it this way, but I'm going to say it this way. Poor people think the primary purpose of money is to pay bills. That's why they're poor. That's what I got out of it. That's what I interpreted it to mean. Poor people think the primary purpose of money is to pay bills. And I thought about it when I was poor. I was always focused on paying my bills. Middle-class people think the primary purpose of money is to establish good credit so they can buy things that they really can't afford, so that they can seem to afford to buy things they really can't afford. And sure enough, I was middle class, and I had good credit for the first time in my life. When I made that $48,000 a year, I had good credit. But rich people think the primary purpose of money, or believe the primary purpose of money, is to turn it into more money. How do you turn money into more money? By taking the money that you have and investing it into assets, because income follows assets. And so I said, okay, what assets do I have? And at that time, I only had 2 assets. I started focusing on those assets, and my earned income in that 1 week in April made me $2,000. I was a traveling evangelist. I was doing a revival at a church. The church had 1,000 people. I spoke at the Christian school. They gave me a $2,000 honorarium. One of the assets that I had when I was doing that, I had a tape ministry where I'd sell tapes of me preaching for $5 a piece. So $5 for a tape that cost me maybe 50 cents to buy blank and then print them and put labels on them might have cost me 75 cents a tape, right? So I'd sell them for $5 a tape. Or I'd sell packs of 6 tapes for $30, right? And so that week at that church, I sold $2,100 worth of tapes, $5 at a time. And then I was in a network marketing company, and my organization that week generated a check. The business volume that my organization did generated a check that week for $2,100. So I made $6,200 in 1 week because I stopped focusing on money as a way to pay bills or as a way to establish good credit, and I started focusing on money as a way to put more money, time, effort, energy, and focus into assets. It changed everything for me. And so when I raised my floor, now it's like it's kind of strange because there's a whole galaxy of potential experiences outside of our current level of awareness. Outside of yours, outside of mine, there's a whole galaxy of experiences that other people are having that's their normal, outside our galaxy of awareness. And so the most money I'd ever made, the last job I ever had was working at a children's home. My wife and I were house parents. We started in 1990. We were there for 4 years, and my starting salary was $14,400. My wife's starting salary was $14,400. So we made $29,000, whatever that turns out to be, $28,800 a year together. Then when we left, we were making $16,000 a year apiece. We were making $32,000 together. That's the most I'd ever made in a job in my life. But by raising my floor, now, on average, our business doesn't have it, like, there are days it doesn't generate this much money, but the average over the last 4 years is over $32,000 a day that the business generates. Why? Number one reason, I raised my floor. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is you have to raise your floor. And raise your floor, it kind of means the same thing as raise your standard, but if you think about it, the floor, that's where you stand. So you're building this structure. So instead of having your floor here, you raise your floor. Okay, so what used to be your floor is now your foundation. Now you raise your floor. So now you're going higher. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to renovate your frame. Now here's a frame, because we're talking about focus, right? Frames create focus. The reason we put frames around pictures is so we can focus on what's inside the what? Frame. Right? And so you reframe, you renovate your frame. What does that mean? That means you renovate how you see how things work. You rebuild, like, if the things that you're doing aren't producing the results you'd like to have produced, the problem is not the thing. The problem is your frame, how you think it works. What do we call processes? We call them what? Frameworks, right? So your framework is off. How you perceive the thing working is not actually how it works, which is what leaves you frustrated and struggling in a time when it's easier to create wealth than it's ever been in human history. So you have to renovate your frame. Now here's what renovate means. Renovate doesn't just mean to build something new. Renovate means to tear out the old and replace it with new. So my first house that I ever bought, 636 Emerald Street, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. That's the first house I ever bought. I bought it at the tax sale. And it was the judicial tax sale, which means all I had to do is buy the house. I didn't have to pay the back taxes. I bought that house for $200, free and clear. It was a 5-bedroom brick row house. It needed some renovations. I worked on it for about 8 years and then eventually sold it for like $56,000. So I renovated the house. But I didn't just put a bunch of stuff on top of the old stuff. I ripped out the old stuff. I ripped out the old drywall. I ripped out the old wiring. I ran new wiring. You say you hired somebody to do that? I didn't hire anybody to do it. I did it. I ripped out the floors and put down new floors. Now, I didn't put down the new floors. I did have my brother and my brother-in-law who used to install carpet. They came and helped me install the carpet and stuff. And I had people who came and helped me. But so much of this renovation work, I did myself. I hung drywall on the ceiling, because I learned how to do that from my dad. I ran the wiring. Me and my dad put in the bathroom, and we put in the kitchen. So I renovated the house. Well, what do? We tore out the old stuff to make room for the new stuff. It's not a renovation if all you're doing is covering old raggedy stuff up with new stuff. You have to tear the old stuff out. Oh, by the way, and when I said I tore out the drywall, but I didn't tear out the drywall because it didn't have drywall. It had plaster on top of those wooden slats. I tore that out and then put drywall on top of it. Right? So I renovated the whole house. You have to renovate your frame. If the experience that you're having in life is not the experience you desire to have, then you have to look at the fact that something I'm believing about how life works isn't working, so I need to rip out my old way of thinking. So you have to renovate your frame. Okay. Now, then, after you renovate your frame, by the way, especially the frame of your focus, and then you reinforce your filter. So what does that mean? That means in some aspects of life, it's more important to filter out the bad stuff than it is to find the good stuff. In fact, one of the things that you'll notice, one of the things I notice in Scripture oftentimes, is God tells us to don't the don't before he tells us to do the do's. Do you ever think about that? Stop doing this. Okay, I'll give you for instance. Blessed is the man, this is Psalms chapter 1, who walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. See how he talked about the things to not do before he talked about the things to do? We have to reinforce our filters. We have to make sure that we double down on the standard that we've set when we raised our floor and we renovated our frame. We have to have things that we will not do. We're not going to do them. So I was at a mastermind, and a friend of mine, associate, I'm going to call him a friend, because I like him. He's a very kind person, but at the same time, he has an extremely foul mouth. Like, extremely. It's like the only adjective he knows is the F word. He's like, Myron, we got to do something together. I'm like, yeah, but bro, we can't do something together because you used so much profanity. There's no way in the world that I could expose you to my audience. He's like, yeah, but you don't have to expose me to your audience. Okay, you missed the point. Like, I've already decided, as long as you talk like that, there's nothing we can do together. He wants to proceed to convince me that it doesn't matter. You are talking to the wrong guy. My brother's right here. He'll tell you, once I have my mind made up, it's a wrap. Right? Do not ask me a question unless you want my answer, because I'm not going to make up an answer to make you feel good. And so you have to have certain things that you won't do. I had a gentleman who bought a $350,000 VIP day for me a year and a half ago. And then we're sitting in here in studio and I'm interviewing him, and I found out what he does for a living, what his business was, and it was something that would be a total misrepresentation of my brand. And I said to him, we got two choices. One, you can promote something else, or two, I can give you a refund. Because there's no universe in any galaxy that has ever existed in which I could promote this to my people. It is totally incongruent with my brand. He said, I'll take the refund. I gave him his $350,000 back. Why? Because my filter is reinforced. Money doesn't break it. Friendships doesn't break it. Relationships don't break it. My filter is established I get my orders from headquarters. And so you have to strengthen your filter. See, like, some people, their filter is not strengthened enough that if somebody offers them enough money, they'll do the thing. One of my past business coaches started this. He started this promotion in his business where he promotes all these old books that are out of print and a lot of Napoleon Hill stuff. And so his affiliate guy reached out to me and said, hey, Myron, would you like to be an affiliate to promote this? No, I can't. Why? Because I'm not a Napoleon Hill fan. Napoleon Hill's broke. Just because he wrote a book called Think and Grow Rich. If it didn't work for him, like, I get it. A lot of people say, oh, they attribute their success to that. That's fine. I'm sure there are some hamburgers in trash cans. That doesn't mean I want to eat them. Okay? So I'm just not a Napoleon Hill fan. I said, I can't. I don't believe Napoleon Hill knew what he was talking about, so I can't promote it. Now, that's what you say, what is that? That's a refined filter. I'm not going to just do something just because it can make me money if it's in the area of my awareness where it's noise that has to be filtered out instead of signal that needs to be focused on. And see, people aren't clear on what to filter out and what to focus on, and so they'll focus on whatever comes along, or they'll focus on whatever will make them the most money or whatever will bring them the most fame. But yeah, I'm not going to do that. So, and then lastly, the last thing you have to do is you have to, well, I didn't write them all down. So number 1 is raise your floor. Number 2, renovate your frame. Renovate your frame. Number 3 is reinforce your filter. And number 4. Number 3 was reinforce your filter. Number 4 is refine your focus. The clearer you are on the thing you're focusing on, the more likely you are to achieve it. So any one of us can use our imagination, okay? What would my life be like if I were to go into the future, focus on, see this potential future and say, okay, what do I have to do to get there? So the most recent thing that comes to my mind is back in 2022, I decided I'm going to go all in on YouTube long-form videos. I decided I'm going to do that. My objective was very different than most YouTubers. Here's what I decided to do. I'm going to produce at least 1 YouTube video a week. I'm going to do that for the next 10 years to see if I can get good at it. Then, somewhere along the way, somewhere on that journey, I think it was in 2022, it might have been in 2023, one of the people who I watch on YouTube is Jordan B. Peterson. So I'm watching Jordan Peterson, and he said something that blew my mind. He said, and at that time he had 5.2 million subscribers. He said, I can fill a room or an arena anywhere in the world with 1,000 to 2,000 people. You can do what? Because of his YouTube channel. I said, you can do what? Guess what happened? Jordan Peterson came to Tampa. I went to see him. My wife went with me. We sat down on the floor. Our tickets were $1,200, $1,199 for my ticket and for my wife's ticket. There were about 500 people on the floor who paid $1,200 for a ticket. There were about 8,000 to 12,000 people in the arena who paid somewhere from between $100 and some other price, $300 probably for their ticket. And I'm like, this is amazing. YouTube can put this many people in the room. Having a YouTube channel, having a YouTube following can allow you to attract that many people into an audience to pay to hear you. That absolutely blew my doors off. Well, guess what I just experienced recently? I did an event in Dallas 2 weeks ago. I promoted it with 4 emails. In 3 weeks, I sent out 4 emails. I went live on Instagram twice. We sold 261 tickets to that event. It was a sold-out event, and 90% of the people stayed in the room at least 90% of the time. And the majority of those people found me on YouTube. You say, Myron, what are you saying? I'm saying my focus on YouTube is so refined because it makes everything else I do in business feel effortless. And so my challenge to you is for you to use your imagination time machine, or as Mr. Whitaker called it, the imagination station, right? Use your imagination time machine. Imagine your bright, beautiful future. Look at all the components of it while you're there, and then come back from the future to the present and reverse engineer and design everything that's going to need to go into your life today to make that your reality tomorrow. And that's how you use your imagination as a time machine to build a life that looks like your future, bright, beautiful future, rather than one that keeps reprinting your past experiences. I hope this video blesses you beyond measure. I hope it's a treat and a treasure, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. Bye for now.